I'm going to pull the thread, I think, and then you can probe me more. How about?
Yeah, yeah, go
But
for it.
we often think, when we hear law, what comes to my mind is rules we should follow. And so, but the Hebrew word Torah means more than that. And anytime we translate from one language to another, something's lost, right? And it's just really important we understand, what does this word mean in the biblical sense? And I actually like the positive word instruction, because I like to think of it more instruction in covenant living. And that Hebrew word Torah, instruction for covenant living. And if you think about, when people hear law, they often think 10 commandments, right? Exodus 20.
Yeah,
And if you think about where that comes in the story, it really transforms our view of it, of how it applies to the old covenant believer's life and the new covenant Christian's life. Because Exodus 20 is not about how to become God's people. In fact, what has just happened in Exodus? God has accomplished the greatest act of redemption in the entire Old Testament, where his
yeah,
people, some say like 1 million people, are slaves in Egypt, and they are completely helpless to purchase themselves out of that slavery. And Yahweh comes with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and through a series of plagues, and then the Red Sea crossing, and then
yeah,
drowning Pharaoh and his army and plundering the Egyptians, they find themselves free. And there's this beautiful line in Exodus 19, I brought you out of Egypt to myself. And so Yahweh has redeemed Israel from Egypt, and he hasn't just brought them to freedom. He hasn't just kind of got them a get out of jail free card and now you can
yeah,
go live your best life now. He has brought them to himself. And then everything that follows in the Pentateuch is preparing them to live as a people with him dwelling in their midst, live as Yahweh worshipers with me dwelling in your midst. And so in Exodus 19, you're going to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And what does a priest do? Well, a priest has access to Yahweh, but a priest also mediates between Yahweh and others. So you're going to be the means of the nations coming to Yahweh. And then in Exodus 20, what Exodus itself calls the 10 words, these words, and later scripture calls commands. So both are legitimate
yeah,
titles for Exodus 20. How does it begin? I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no gods before my face. And it goes on. And so there's this word of gospel before there's the first command or the first word of instruction. And so the structure there is clearly, you are my redeemed people, present tense. I have redeemed you from Egypt. You are my people. I have, Exodus 19, brought you to myself. Now, here's how to live now that you are my people. Don't have any
yeah,
gods before me. And it goes on with the 10 words. And then it goes on 21 to 24 with case laws, what to do in the community, how to live in the community with some of the particulars. And then it goes on to tabernacle, priesthood, and sacrifice. And so how to approach Yahweh and how to, anyway, we could get into that, but people can read the book or other books. But yeah, so I think that's a really important clarification. It's not how to become God's people. It's instruction for covenant living to people who are God's people.